From the land of 10,000 lakes and just as many heartaches, welcome to the 301 Show. We're here to celebrate, commiserate, and maybe, just maybe, see a Minnesota team win it all. Whether you're dreaming of a Vikings Super Bowl, reliving the glory days of the Twins, or still recovering from the Timberwolves roller coaster, we've got you covered. This is the 301 Show, where the North remembers and the passion never fades.
All right, yes, welcome into the 301 Show, episode 25. Today may be a bit of a shorter episode as 4 of the 6 teams are currently in their off-season. So, yeah, again, might be a bit of a shorter one, but we still have a good one here today. We got some off-season rumors. We got players coming back, re-signing with teams. And then we've got contract extensions given out for non-players too. So let's get into that plus more here on the 301 Show today. All right, starting with Rinkside Rundown today. The Wild, again, the only thing really on the news is the Wild and Canucks trade rumors for Marco Rossi. According to Michael Russo of The Athletic, Vancouver offered the Wild the 15th overall pick in this upcoming draft in a week or two, and Guerin apparently turned it down for Rossi. He'd rather have Rossi than the 15th overall pick, and he said he would rather have an NHL roster-ready player and not a prospect or a pick. So that is the type of return he is looking for a Marco Rossi. And it according to Michael Russo, the Canucks actually made an offer to the Wild. It wasn't just this speculation that they were interested. They actually then went out and made an offer. And this is all coming off the back of John Hines not playing Rossi too much in the playoffs. He was the fourth line center, and I think Marco Rossi is just disgruntled with that, and he obviously is a restricted free agent this year, so he wants to get paid too. So if they can work out a deal, I think that's the best thing. As long as he's getting paid more, or not paid more, as long as he's getting played more than a fourth line center. Because I think Rossi is better than a fourth line center. I think he's on this roster right now. He's probably one of the top 2 centers on this team. It's either him and Eriksson Ek are the 2 best centers on this roster right now. So I think bringing him back, they got to pay him like it is, and then they have to actually play him like he is a top 2 center on this team. But yeah, that is basically all the news we have for the Wild this week. They don't have a first round pick in this upcoming draft because they traded it for David Jiricek, so this would replace that pick. It is 2 spots ahead of where they would have been picking. They would have been picking 17th. Excuse me, not 17th. That is more than 2 spots. The Timberwolves are picking 17th in their draft. But it is way ahead of, I think it was the early 20s is where the Wild are actually picking. So 15 would be a massive step up. But the, Guerin doesn't want a pick or a prospect right now. That's again basically it for the Wild side of this. But we do have some big news out of the Frost, the other hockey team here in the Twin Cities. Their free agency has opened, so they have been able to make moves. So last week, after losing a couple of players in the expansion drafts to Seattle and Vancouver, they lose a couple more. Michaela Cava signs with PWHL Vancouver one of the two new expansion teams, and then Liz Shepard signs with the Boston Fleet. So there's two more pieces off of these first two championship teams that are gone. But they did bring back a couple of players. According to the Frost, they brought back Natalie Bookbinder. She re-signed on a 2-year deal on a standard player agreement. And then goaltender Maddie Rooney is re-signing for 3 years on a standard player agreement. And this is the one I want to get into a little bit more here in depth. The Frost general manager, Melissa Caruso, said they wanted she said, quote, "Keeping our goaltending tandem together for next season was a priority because they have been so crucial to our success." And I completely agree. And the evidence to back this up comes from both Rooney's career regular season stats as well as her playoff stats. She seems to turn it up in the playoffs. Her career record is 13-10-5. She has a 2.08 goals against average and a .910 save percentage with 4 shutouts over 2 years. In the playoffs, again, over two playoff runs, she is 8-2. She has a 1.46 goals against average and a .939 save percentage with 2 shutouts. So she somehow turns it, plays well in the regular season, and then somehow finds another level in the playoffs to play even better than that. So, again, somehow turns it up, but absolutely fantastic that the Frost were able to keep their goaltending tandem. Nicole Hensley was already under contract for this upcoming season. I think she'll be a free agent next summer. So they had at least one of their 2 goalies that were here last year coming back. And then they brought back Maddie Rooney to keep their goaltending tandem together, which is, again, even more insane when you think about that Maddie Rooney was undrafted out of the initial not fantasy draft, basically a fantasy draft if you play the NHL video games, but the league initial draft, Maddie Rooney did go undrafted and was signed to the Frost and has taken over as the other goalie in the goaltender tandem duo here for Minnesota. So that is basically all the news here in the hockey realm here in Minnesota. We'll get to predictions here. Had one come off the board. That was that Maddie Rooney. Early on, I predicted that Maddie Rooney will win the PWHL Goaltender of the Year. That was wrong. She is not. They haven't announced the winner yet, but she is not one of the nominees. That brings me to keeps it at 17 total correct for 54 total predictions for a 31% correct rate. Now going over here, 3 predictions going on the board. Maddie Rooney will have 2 or more shutouts next season. She's had, again, like I said, she's had 4 in her 2-year career in the PWHL so far. So she's going to have another 2 this season. Said that Philip Gustafson will lead the NHL in wins, shutouts, goals against average, and or save percentage. So one of these 4 major stats for a goaltender, he will lead the NHL in. And then the Frost and or Wild will have the best regular season record in the 2025-26 regular season. Not including the playoffs, just the regular season. All right, now moving on to the Nordic Report here. The big news out of Egan that we touched on a little bit last week was that Kwesi Dofamensa got his contract extension. According to Kevin Seifert, it is a multi-year deal unsure of the exact dollar value or year length. So unsure of the exact details of the contract, but other than it being a multi-year deal. And Seifert did say that Kwesi will remain the official top decision maker. There are some rumors that KOC might have more control, but Kwesi is the one that has his final decision on everything. He's the one that gives it the stamp of approval or declines it. Now I'm sure KOC and even Brian Flores too can have their say on offensive and defensive players that they want, but ultimately it is Kwesi's decision on if he wants to be the one that actually goes out and contacts whatever player or makes whatever move. And he's also the one that is negotiating the exact terms of the deal. So yeah, Kwesi stays in charge for another multi-year deal. In the same report by Kevin Seifert, we officially learned that KOC's contract is 5 years. It is a 5-year deal. So KOC has 1 more year left on his current deal, and then will be back for another 5 after that. So he will be here for 9 years officially, obviously unless they fire him, which knock on wood, and I really don't think they will. But again, speaking of the KOC getting fired, every time that the Vikings have played the Baltimore Ravens, when they lose, their coach gets fired, and when they win, they go to the conference championship game. So the Vikings do play the Baltimore Ravens this year, so be sure to look for that that result this upcoming season. And if the Vikings lose, hopefully the streak gets broken, because I really don't think that KOC is in a position to be fired after this season. Even if the season goes poorly, I think they can say that J.J. McCarthy wasn't ready just yet in his first year, but just trust them that they have a plan in place. So if they do win, again, keep that in mind too, because there's a good chance that they could go to the NFC Championship game. But other news here, the NFL released their quarter century team for being obviously a quarter into the 21st century. They looked at all the players that played at least one season in the 21st century, and they made a 53-man roster. And they only looked at the seasons played in the 21st century. So if you played, most of your career in the 90s and then played like 2 years in the 2000s, you're only being judged on those couple of years in the 2000s. So that is how they made that decision. But there were a couple of players that of Vikings that have made the team. A couple I think got snubbed. And then there was one massive Minnesotan who didn't play for the Vikings, but a Minnesotan that I think got snubbed from this list. So let's go over. There's 4 players. There's 3 Vikings. True, when you think of them, you think of the Vikings. And then 1 player played a couple seasons for the Vikings, but you think of another team first. So there's 4 Vikings that made the quarter century team. 2 wide receivers, Randy Moss and Justin Jefferson. Justin Jefferson has already made this team. I think Randy Moss is arguably the number 2 receiver in the NFL history. And he only played 2 seasons in the 90s before most of his career was in the 2000s. So he was an absolute shoo-in for that. Justin Jefferson, I could make the argument that it's a little early. The Minnesotan that got snubbed was a wide receiver. So in my opinion, I would take Jefferson off right now and have him be the practice squad wide receiver, but he made the team. Then you had those are the only two offensive players that made the team as a Viking. The other two were defensive players. One was Jared Allen, who absolutely deserves to be on this list, and then the other one is Patrick Peterson. So again, he played a couple years here, but is more known for his time in Arizona than his time in Minnesota and Pittsburgh. But those are the four Vikings who made the team. Randy Moss, Justin Jefferson, Jared Allen, and Patrick Peterson. And there's three that I want to go over here that got snubbed, two Vikings that got snubbed, and then the Minnesotan that got snubbed. The two Vikings that got snubbed, one, Adrian Peterson. Their three running backs were CMC, Derrick Henry, and Priest Holmes. I'd probably put Adrian Peterson on that list. They said LaDainian Tomlinson was their practice squad running back, which again, I'd probably try to find a way to get him on the active 53-man roster too. But I think prime AP and prime LT should be in that running back room as the active running backs. And then the other one that I think you can make the argument they got snubbed, I think AP was like the biggest one of the players that actually played for the Vikings, was Harrison Smith. If you actually look at his numbers, obviously we know Harrison Smith is a future Hall of Famer. I don't know how he didn't make this list. Again, there are good safeties, but there were a couple of safeties which I'm forgetting off the top of my head right now, but there are good safeties that missed or made this list, made this roster, that are worse than Harrison Smith. I think are worse than Harrison Smith. So I think Harrison Smith should have made the 53-man roster of this fake quarter-century team. The Minnesotan that got snubbed, again, I personally have him in my top four receivers of all time. I think he is the most underrated receiver ever. And I'd probably put him, I would have put him above Justin Jefferson at this point. And Justin Jefferson, obviously he's a Viking now. I love Justin Jefferson. If this was the half-century team, I think Justin Jefferson, if he keeps performing the way he does, Justin Jefferson might be the number one receiver on this list. But Larry Fitzgerald absolutely should have made this list, and he didn't. And it's an absolute shame. To me, my top four receivers are in order are Jerry Rice, Randy Moss, Calvin Johnson, Larry Fitzgerald. Larry Fitzgerald, again, the single most underrated wide receiver ever. He has more tackles. He has tackled more players than he has dropped passes. That is insane. An offensive player has more tackles than they do drop passes. I don't see a way that he shouldn't have made that. Like, I don't see a way that he was left off this list. And we live in the reality that he does, or that he was left off this list. And I think it's a shame. I do. Like, if you said you're making an all-time roster, everybody in their prime, who do you want as one of your receivers from this first quarter of the century? Randy Moss and Larry Fitzgerald and Calvin Johnson are the three receivers I am naming first. Those are absolutely the three receivers I'm naming first. So it's, again, I think it's terrible that he didn't make this list. So hopefully he can make the half-century team when we get to 2050. But as for predictions here, first predictions that came off the board, there were none. Again, we are in the dead of the off season at this point, so my percentage is still at 36%. Now going over to the three going on the board here, I said at least one Viking offensive lineman will make the Pro Bowl team, and the actual Pro Bowl team, not one of the reserves. Yeah. The Vikings will go above 500 in the division, so they'll go 4-2, 5-1, or 6-0 in the division. Above 500, so they will not go 3-3 or worse. Which they did go 4-2 last year. They swept the Bears and the Packers, and then got swept by the Lions. So I think not putting this on the record, but I think they split with the Packers and split with the Lions this year to get 2 losses, and that's how they go 4-2 in the division. And then the final prediction here for the Nordic Report is that the Vikings will win their home opener. So one offensive lineman from the Vikings will make the Pro Bowl, at least one. Vikings go above 500 in the division, and then the Vikings will win their home opener. Yes, now let's move on to the Wolves' Den here. John Gambardoro, the NBA insider, has an update on the KD trade situation for the Timberwolves. He said that the Wolves have an offer on the table for the Suns to consider. The Suns would receive Rudy Gobert, Dante DiVincenzo, the 17th overall pick, and then either Rob Dillingham and or Terrence Shannon Jr. I personally think this is way too much to give up for Kevin Durant, because the Wolves would just receive Kevin Durant, and that's it. There's nothing else attached on the Suns side heading to the Wolves. I think it's too much to give up for a 37, will be 38-year-old Kevin Durant. I'm willing to give up Rudy. I'm willing to give up obviously one of the Dillingham, Shannon Jr. and 17th overall pick. I'd maybe be willing to give up Dante. I'd like to keep Dante. I know he was very streaky this last year, but he was to have him for the entire season, the training camp, have him settle into an actual team from the beginning of the season would be fantastic. So again, the longer this goes on, the more I'm like, I just don't care anymore. I don't. And I think that this trade offer is too much to give up for Kevin Durant at this point. But the Wolves have made an offer. They have officially made an offer to the Phoenix Suns. The Suns are looking at all their other options. But I don't, as of right now, I don't see this happening. KD, to his part, this is according to Mike McDaniel, not the Miami Dolphins head coach. That is Mike McDaniels with an S. This is Mike McDaniel. According to him, Kevin Durant only wants to play for Houston, San Antonio, and Miami. And those are the 3 teams he wants to trade for him. It doesn't matter what happens with that, though, because he doesn't have a full no move clause. He doesn't have any type of trade protection. If the Suns think that the Wolves offer is the best offer, then that will happen. Like, the Suns can go out and make the trade with the Wolves. So KD can say, hey, these are the 3 teams I want to go play for, but the Suns don't have to honor that whatsoever. They are not contractually obligated to do that in any way. So they are just looking for the best offer. I think from what I heard too is San Antonio has an offer on the board. I could not find what that was, but it was something less than what the Wolves offered. So they said that they were probably out on it. I do think Kevin Durant, for his part though, would be a good fit on San Antonio with Wemby. Gonna stretch that stretch the floor a little bit more with the KD being a good kind of mid-range and 3-point, not a fantastic 3-point shooter, but for a big man, being a decent 3-point shooter and not just being in close. So I think that would be a good fit to pair those two together. KD also said he doesn't like cold weather, and he doesn't like, and he wants a state with no state income tax, which again, I don't fully believe because he played in Brooklyn. So I don't think he, unless it actually changed over the years and now he wants to have warm weather and no state income tax, which is that could happen. That is a viable route, but I don't see why he wouldn't want to come here as well. So I think of those teams between Minnesota, Houston, Miami, and San Antonio, because those are the 4 teams I think that are closest. And not just because they made the Western Conference Finals this past year. I think of those 4 teams, Minnesota is the closest to winning a championship right now. And could KD put the Wolves up over the edge for 1 year? They absolutely could. He could be a guy that puts them up over the edge, gets them over the hump into the NBA Finals and potentially winning a championship. But at this point, there's just been so much drama with it that I don't care anymore. Now I'll probably be singing a different tune in late July, early August when there's no news going on and that's the only thing there is to talk about. But for right now, I'm more focused. I'd rather look at next week's NBA draft, which we'll get into next week more. But yeah, I don't know where this actually stands at this point, to be honest. But yeah, moving on, we do have a basketball team that is currently playing games here in the state of Minnesota. That is the Minnesota Lynx. They improved to 11-1. If you remember last week, they were handed their first loss of the season right before the day before recording last week's episode. So they did win both their games this week. They improved to 11-1 on the season. They are second in points for per game at 85.1. Field goal percentage, 46.6. That is third in the NBA. 3-point percentage, 37.4%. That is number 1 in the NBA. Free throw percentage, they are 6th. Rebounds, they are 7th. Blocks per game, they are 3rd. Turnovers per game, turnover differential per game, they dropped. They are 11th in the WNBA at minus 1.8. Last week, I think it was a minus 0.2 or something like that. So they struggled with turning the ball over and not causing turnover, or not forcing the other team to turn it over. On the defensive side of the ball, again, they look a lot like the Wolves, where they are fantastic defensively. Now, this team is fantastic, it seems, other than the turnover differential, fantastic all around. But defensively, like the Wolves, they are absolutely outstanding. Points against per game, 74.8. That's number 1 in the NBA. Field goal against percentage, 40.8. That is second lowest. 3-point percentage is 30.5. That is third lowest. Rebounds against per game is 33.9. That is 6th fewest. And then blocks against per game is 2.9, which is tied for 3rd fewest in the NBA. If we look back, again, at those 2 games that they had this week, they played the LA Sparks. They got the win there, 101-78. Nafisa Collier played 31 minutes in that game, had 32 points on 13 of 16 shooting, with 8 rebounds, 6 assists, 2 steals, and 2 blocks. So absolutely fantastic game from her against the LA Sparks. The other game they had was at home against the Las Vegas Aces. They won that game 76-62. So again, picked up 2 wins in the past week. Looking ahead now, they got the Sparks again here on Saturday, June 21st at 7 p.m. And then they go on a 2-game road trip in Washington against the Mystics, Washington, D.C. And I believe Washington. They play the Washington Mystics at Washington at 7 p.m. on Tuesday the 24th, and then at the Atlanta Dream at 7 p.m. on Friday the 27th, June 27th. And then the Lynx will play the Fever in the Commissioner's Cup on the 1st. So, again, exciting time for basketball here in Minnesota. And if we look here at predictions, we had none come off the board this past week. And my percentage stays at 23%. So then 3 going on the board here. I said Naz Reid will be in the Wolves starting lineup on opening night in 25-26. So a couple things have to go right there. Naz Reid has to re-sign, and then either somebody has to be hurt, or Julius maybe doesn't re-sign, or something like that to get Naz Reid, who has been a bench player other than his times where he started during while other people were hurt, like Julius was hurt. So Naz Reid will be in the starting lineup. A couple things have to go right for that to happen. I said Ant will finish in the top 5 in average points per game in the 25-26 season. And then KD, final prediction, KD will not be traded to the Minnesota Timberwolves. It sounds like there's other teams, as we said, in the mix here. And I think they will, the Suns will work out a trade with one of those other teams. So that is it for this week's Wolves Den. On to the next. All right, the final team segment here before we get to the power rankings is the Target Field Talkers. The Twins, again, continue their spiral towards the bottom. They are 37-37. They've fallen to 3rd place in the Central. They have fallen completely out of the wild card race and now have to jump a couple teams to get back into. They are in 6th place in the wild card. Their hitting stats, their batting average is .243, which is 19th. Their on-base percentage is tied for 17th in the MLB at .315. Slugging percentage is .395 at 17th. On-base plus slugging is .710 at 16th. Runs scored is .314 at 18th. Home runs, 81, 13th. Walks, they have 219, which is 22nd. Strikeouts, 616, which is the 14th fewest when they are batting. Stolen bases is 36, which is 27th. That is only trailed by the Angels, the Rockies, and the Detroit Tigers. So, the Rocco just doesn't like to have his guys run. It also doesn't help that, guys are getting injured all the time, and it's lower body injuries where they seem to just re-aggravate those injuries when they try to steal. So maybe Rocco is actually onto something because he's trying to keep his players on the actual field. But if we look back, not look back, let's move on to the pitching and fielding rankings. Their ERA continues to drop in the rankings. They're sitting at 3.90 ERA, which is 19th. They were in the top 10 last week. Their WHIP is tied for 10th. That is 1.22. They were tied for 5th last week. Strikeouts, 641. That is 12th. The walks, this is the one really, really good thing on the defensive slash pitching side of the field. They've only walked 197 batters. And that is the only team in the MLB that hasn't walked at least 200 batters this season. They are number one. They have the fewest walks in the MLB. In terms of the fielding, the Twins have committed as an entire team 36 errors, which is tied for 16th. And their fielding percentage is an 986, which is also tied for 16th. So everything except for the walks on the pitching side, everything seems to be just average. They're exactly 500. They're just it doesn't seem like they're actually doing much of anything at this point. And we look back at this past week. They had the series in Houston and then the series in Cincinnati. They were swept in Houston. They lost over 3 games. They were outscored 15-6. And then they really lost 4 times because Royce Lewis goes back on the IL, the 10-day IL, with a hamstring strain, which is what I was kind of alluding to earlier with the lower body injuries when trying to run. And it didn't even look like Royce was running like super, super hard to first base. But he just, his hamstrings can't stay healthy at this point. Then they go to Cincinnati, where Buxton, in the series in Houston, Buxton did get hit by a pitch. He had to miss Sunday's game in Houston, and that was the only game he missed. So he was back in Cincinnati. He didn't make much of a difference because they still lost 2 of 3 in Houston. Their only game they won was a 12-5 win yesterday on Thursday. So, yeah. Speaking of Buxton, he should absolutely be an all-star this year. Him and Duran should be the 2 all-stars for the Twins this season. Those are by far and away the 2 players that are playing the best. You could argue Joe Ryan too should be an all-star, but I think it'll probably be just Buxton realistically, but it should be all 3. If we look ahead here, to the next week, Milwaukee, they've got a 3-game weekend series against Milwaukee at home here, and then Seattle comes to town for 4 games. So have to get back on track if they want to do anything. I'm not entirely sure that they will, but they've got 7 straight games at home over 7 days. So hopefully sleeping in their own beds, seeing their families, that they can figure something out here. A couple of things I want to talk about. First off, the trade deadline's coming up. I really don't think they should go out and buy, just with what they would have to give up. Like a lot of times it's prospects, so I don't think that they are going to go out and buy at the deadline if they kind of see the writing on the wall of we're not going to make a deep playoff run here. I think they should probably lean towards sell. I'm not saying blow the entire thing up, trade everybody, but I think they could sell off some pieces here at the deadline and get a decent return back for them to set them up for future years to come. So I'm probably leaning towards sell at this point. Again, I don't want to rant again here about the Twins. But yeah, they should just probably sell. Now, the ownership update, the Pohlads still have the Twins on the market, but there are talks about the Tampa Bay Rays are getting close to sell. Again, these are just rumors and talks at this point. But they are in talks to sell for $1.7 billion, which is what Baltimore sold for. That Baltimore was the last team to sell within the last couple of years. So the Tampa Bay Rays are able to sell. So I'm like, my thought is one, how poorly run is the behind the scenes of the Twins, where the Tampa Bay Rays, who just had their stadium ruined by the hurricane in Florida and are playing in a minor league stadium right now, are selling for the exact same amount that Baltimore did a couple years ago. Now, I'm not saying that Baltimore's also poorly run. Now they're having a down year this year. That's just the inflation of the the times as we go along. They're going to sell for more money as time goes along. So this is probably going to be a thing where the Twins are not going to sell for less than $1.7 billion now. I think the Pohlads are going to have $1.7 billion in their pockets when they, at least $1.7 billion in their pockets when they do sell the Twins. They could very well pull them off the market, and it could be a couple years from now that they sell. But because the Rays and the situation that they're in, just sold or are in talks to sell for 1.7, I really don't think the Twins are, because the currently they still, again, I know it's not this year because of the hurricane, but they still call Tropicana home. So that is the worst stadium in the MLB. After the Oakland Coliseum is no longer an MLB stadium, it's Tropicana is the worst stadium in the MLB. So they the Twins have a far better stadium in Target Field. It is 15 years old at this point, but Target Field is a way better stadium than Tropicana. And they weren't getting any fans to begin with to fill up that stadium, and now they can barely fill up the minor league stadium, the spring training stadium, and they sold for 1.7 billion. So I really don't think the Pohlads are going to look at that and go, oh, we should take a discount and sell for less than that because we just want to be done with it. I think they could see, like, we could get 1.8, 1.9, 2 billion out of this. So I think, that's likely what is going to happen with the ownership sale. If we move to the predictions here, had one come off the board, said Harrison Bader will play 60-plus games in the outfield this year, which was correct. He has played, I think, 65 games in the outfield, or is for sure played. It's either 63 or 65 games in the outfield, one of those two. So it's above 60 games regardless. So that brings me to 7 of 31 for 23%. Moving to the three predictions going on the board. I'm actually putting it in writing. I said the Twins will sell for at least $1.7 billion. Pablo Lopez, again, was out for 8 to 12 weeks with that shoulder injury. I said he makes at least one more regular season start in the 2025 season. And then the Twins will miss the playoffs this year. So not looking too great for the Twins right about now. All right, now moving on to the power rankings segment here. This week's topic is the top 10 most hated teams by Minnesota sports fans. So this is going to be all different sports. It's going to be not necessarily just the pros too. So this will be the top 10 most hated sports teams by Minnesota sports fans. So coming in at number 10, we are starting south of the Minnesota border. We are going not professional too, so we will go to number 10, the Iowa Hawkeyes. The rivalry there with the Gophers. I think in football, the recent younger fans don't like them because they are that they ruined that 2019 Cinderella run season after beating Penn State. They lose to the Iowa Hawkeyes to ruin their perfect season up until that point. So yeah, the Iowa Hawkeyes, again, new fans, old fans, everybody seems to hate the Iowa Hawkeyes. Number 9, this one is more again, has both reasons for both young fans and old fans to hate this team. Old fans are going to hate the owner of this team more than the actual team themselves. So, that being said, number 9 is the Dallas Stars, beating the Wild in the playoffs too after the Wild became a team. But the Norm Green moving the Stars too. Again, older fans more hate Norm Green than the actual Stars themselves, but they also, their big sin recently, other than just beating the Wild in their playoffs, but their big sin recently was employing Ryan Suter after he left the Wild. Number 8, going over to football. Number 8 is the Chicago Bears. Again, they have more of a rivalry with the Packers, so we don't hate them as much. But again, just with how annoying their fans are and how much they think every year is their year. They've won the offseason the last couple of years, which isn't fantastic. You can't, so you're not going to, just because you win the offseason doesn't immediately translate to regular season success. So the Chicago Bears come in at number 8. Number 7, we're sticking in the Windy City, but we're going over to the NHL, and number 7 is the Chicago Blackhawks. And they beat the Wild 3 years in a row in the playoffs. That was a little bit ago, so almost a decade ago at this point. So they cooled off a little bit, but I still think, just being also a division rival, that is another hated team by Minnesotans. Coming in at number 6 here, again, sticking with the hockey theme, but we will go up north more and west to the University of North Dakota. I think the Fighting Sioux, the Fighting Hawks, whatever you want to call them, they are very much hated by the Twin City, the University of Minnesota. I think this is of all the D1 sports teams or D1 hockey teams in Minnesota, all 6 of them, the University of North Dakota is probably the one that is agreed upon the most that will be hated universally amongst all those teams. So that one, again, not really hated amongst other sports in Minnesota, so can't really rank it much higher than number 6, since it is a mostly hockey rivalry there. But going on to number 5 here, again, this is a hockey rivalry. This is a football rivalry. We are sticking in college with the University of Wisconsin. The Badgers, again, very hated amongst at least the Gophers, and I think the Twin Cities area. So the University of Wisconsin, again, massive rivals. They always play on rivalry weekend, the Gophers and the Badgers do in football. So the Badgers come in at number 5 here. Number 4, we go the New Orleans Saints. Again, a lot of it still stems from the 2009-10 NFC Championship game with Bounty Gate and Brett Favre. But the New Orleans Saints are a top 4 hated team in Minnesota here. Number 3, again, another team with a playoff history with their Minnesota counterpart here, the New York Yankees. Again, they're one of the most hated teams in the MLB. So, and then them, beating up on the Twins so much in recent years in the playoffs absolutely has to make this list as my number 3 team. So they get on the podium, but we've got 2 teams ahead of them in this list. Number 2, I do think benefits from some recency bias too. Number 2 is the Philadelphia Eagles. Again, their fan base is annoying, and they, again, beat the Vikings in the playoffs, prevented them from hosting the Super Bowl in Minnesota back in 2018. And yeah, I don't think Vikings fans have forgiven them for that. The fans, again, treat the Eagles poorly, or the Eagles fans treat Vikings fans poorly in Philadelphia. And they were also throwing stuff at the Vikings team bus allegedly throwing things at the Vikings team bus after the Eagles beat them in Philadelphia in the NFC Championship game. And number 1 here, this isn't really a debate. Number 1 is the Green Bay Packers. It has to be. It is the biggest rival of one of the Minnesota sports teams, but the Green Bay Packers are the most hated team here in the state of Minnesota. Again, no question on who number 1 was going to be amongst the hated teams here in Minnesota. All right. Thank you for tuning in to episode 25 of the 301 show. We are at that point where I ask you to like and subscribe, comment down below too if you think any of my takes were wrong, if you disagree with my power rankings list, and if you want to see me rank have another topic idea for me to rank, leave that down below too. The only requirement is basically it has to be about Minnesota sports. That's the only thing I'll limit it to, but I'll basically rank anything in Minnesota sports too. So again, thank you for tuning in, and we will see you next time. Peace.